Okay, this is the Twitter handle. The boogeyman is coming. And he put, looks like the Shape was just planning on random killing all night until he heard the news report that Laurie, about Laurie on the boombox. Then he was like, oh, I thought that girl was dead. Guess I better go finish her off. Road to kills. And it's kind of funny. But then when I was looking at it, I was just like, holy shit, hold on just a second. That's an interesting point. Like, what if Myers didn't know where Laurie was? What if he didn't know that she was in the hospital? And, or, you know, in the first movie too, guys, keep in mind that Laurie Strode is not his sister. So, if you were to carry that idea over to the second movie, would he even care? I mean, he probably would want to finish off his prey, but if his prey is like way, way out of the picture, you know, is Michael that type of killer that's just going to just keep coming after that one particular person? Or does he just move on to whoever's around him? Because that's kind of the nature of Myers. He just wants to kill people on Halloween night. There's no emotional connection. You know, it's all primal. It's just straight up primal. So it's an interesting thing to discuss, really. And let me get these super chats real quick, and then I'll continue my thought. Lee, I can't wait for Halloween Kills. I'd put 2018 at number 1. The kills were great. Myers was phenomenal, and it was a hell of a ride. It was definitely a hell of a ride. You know, it's not a perfect movie. Definitely wouldn't put it at number 1. But, man, what it got right, it really got right. I agree with that, Mike. CJ Kidd says, I used to think Halloween 4 would have been a better sequel to 78. And used to just watch H4 after Halloween 78, but then forgot that it doesn't work because Michael is in a coma due to Halloween 2. So, yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. To watch Halloween 4, you kind of have to watch Halloween 2. So, but, so going back to my thought, let's explain that particular scene anyway, because did you guys know that particular scene right there, and let me pull up that scene for you. If we take that off and then we put that on. Okay. That particular scene right there was not shot in the original production schedule. John Carpenter was approached to do Halloween 2, to direct. And he ended up not doing it. He wanted to move on to other things. He wanted to do The Fog, but he was still going to produce it. So they ended up hiring Rick Rosenthal, who had the same agent as John Carpenter. You know, Hollywood's a small town, if you really think about it. Like, everybody's kind of connected in a certain way. And it's just like any other job, it's all networking and who you know. So, this, I believe, was Rick Rosenthal's first feature film. And I think he does a good job on the movie. You know, luckily he has Dean Cundy in his back pocket. But, yeah, I mean, and Rick Rosenthal went into this movie wanting it to feel like the first movie in tone, you know, because it takes place on the same night. So if you're shooting a movie on the same night, you definitely want it to feel like the previous movie. But this particular scene right here wasn't in the original shooting schedule. So John Carpenter came back after the movie had wrapped shooting, and this is common to have to come back and reshoot some scenes. And, you know, Carpenter came back to amp up the kills a little bit. He shot, like, the scene where you see Myers' head just, like, burning at the end of the movie. Carpenter shot that. The scene at the beginning where you have Myers' first victim, the teenager that's on the phone. That was all shot by Carpenter. And then this scene right here. And the reason Carpenter shot this scene was because somebody said, how in the fuck does Myers know that Laurie's at the hospital? And I'm paraphrasing, but that's pretty much the gist of it. And so Carpenter was like, oh shit, I guess I got to go in there and I got to shoot something. And so he went and he shot that scene right there, just real quick. Myers walking and he hears the boombox stating that Laurie Strode is at the hospital, and so he ends up going to the hospital. But it does bring up an interesting, like, what if, you know, that scene never happened, and what if we went down a completely different path? And to properly discuss that, let's talk about Carpenter's mindset when he wrote this script. Let me take a drink. Okay. All right. So Carpenter, when he wrote the script, he had nothing in his head. He was just like, how in the hell am I going to continue this story? Because Halloween was never supposed to have a sequel, but it made Halloween money, and they eventually had to make a sequel. They felt like they needed to make a sequel, even though back then sequels weren't a common thing. You know, yeah, they existed, but it wasn't like today where like everything gets a sequel, and that's all you see at the theater now are sequels and remakes and whatnot. Not back then, though. Carpenter was fine with Halloween being good, you know, done. But they figured, I think Friday the 13th was part of the reason they wanted to make a sequel to Halloween, because there was a boom in the market with slasher movies. And so the people at it eventually went to Universal. So let's say the producers, the Accods and all of them, they were like, we should cash in on this because all these movies are making big money. So it was greenlit, and they said, let's make Halloween 2. So they went to Carpenter, write a script. Carpenter stated he was in his apartment or in his house 2 o'clock in the morning, and he had nothing. And he was just like, shit, I will make her his sister. And so that's how that happened. He literally just flew, just right then and there. Okay, let's just go ahead and write her as, okay, now we can make a story, because we need a purpose. Why would Myers want to keep going after her? I think that's the roadblock that Carpenter had, because Myers is just a blank slate. He's just pure evil. So why would he want to keep coming after her? So yeah, and that was your reasoning. But I think a lot of times when you have a lot of pressure on you, and I think you have like 10% of your thoughts are right there front and center, but then you have that other 90% that are just right behind you, and the hindsight will get you, because in the future, I'm sure Carpenter probably thought, damn, why didn't I do this, or why didn't I do this, or why didn't I do this? Have you guys ever done that, where you had an idea, but later you think up 10 different ideas that would have been better than the first idea that you came up with? I think that's probably what Carpenter did. And, just thinking in my own mind here, let's say that part 2, Laurie is not Michael's sister. Let's say that in Myers' mind, she might be dead. I don't fucking know. I did stab her in the arm. She did fall down the stairs. We had a good tussle, and then I fell. But she could be dead. So let's just assume that there's, Myers is not going to Haddonfield Memorial Hospital. Okay? So what does he do? What does he do? And I want feedback from you guys on this too, okay? What do you, like, would you have been cool with that? Like if Myers did not pursue Laurie, and even better yet, Laurie was not Myers' sister? Are you a fan or not a fan of the sister angle in Halloween 2? Because here's what I think. Thinking back on it, I think it would have been kind of cool. You could have had the best of both worlds. She's not his sister, but she still could be in the story, because Myers doesn't know that she's at the hospital, right? And what does Myers do on Halloween night? He goes door to door and he just kills people. And so what if Myers gets up? Let's keep that first victim in the movie that Carpenter shot. He just kills her. And then it's kind of like a cat and mouse chase for Myers. It's almost like the second movie could have been Myers being on the run from the cops and just killing people along the way. I guess kind of like a Ted Bundy type thing, as morbid as that sounds. But I think there's possibilities that you could have delved into if you went down that road, you know? And you could have had like a whole new crop of characters, which you do have a new crop of characters in part 2, but I think it would have been kind of interesting if it took place in Haddonfield, just another neighborhood. And let's just say Loomis down the line finds out where Myers is, you know? And let's just say that maybe Laurie is in the hospital, but she's not dead, and somehow she finds out that Myers is on the loose still. So she wants to end this madness, because I can't live any longer without knowing that he's dead. You know, even though I'm not in his crosshairs anymore, I have to do something. So Laurie escapes the hospital. Let's assume that Laurie's not, you know, hurt that bad. Enough to where, you know, she still can get some adrenaline going. She escapes the hospital, intercepts Loomis, and then they work together, and then they find Myers, and it becomes a showdown at the end of the movie. I'm not saying that that's better than what happened in Halloween 2, because I do love Halloween 2, but that's just another option that could have happened, you know? And there's probably 5 other options that could have happened, because Myers is just, when you have a blank slate character like that, then you have carte blanche. You can go anywhere. You can go hog wild. You have a character that's not constrained. You know, he's not confined to a corner. That's the great thing about Myers. He can go after anybody. But once you make him a sibling, and I will say, you know, throughout the years when you were having these movies coming out like Halloween 4, Halloween 5, I was really into that whole brother-sister angle. And it is interesting to have a character that is just hell-bent, for no reason whatsoever, to kill direct members of their family. That's interesting to me. To go that far, to be that completely fucked in the head. So I think either way, it's interesting to have him not be a sibling and just kill just to kill. But it's also very interesting to have that kind of angle. Like, why in the hell would he want to just kill every member in his family? And I think that's part of the thing that made me obsessed with the franchise, because I think they honed in on that aspect in Halloween 4 the best. Like, perfectly. And I'll even say this right now, I still prefer Halloween 4 well over Halloween 2. I do, just because of, that's probably a big reason, because Myers is like, it's like Myers on steroids, and he'll do anything to kill his niece, who is a little girl. You know, this is a little freaking 10-year-old girl, and he doesn't care. She's got to die. And Halloween 4 encompasses that the best, I think, out of all the movies. So, but I want to hear what you guys think about this theory. Like, is that something that you guys would have been cool with? I don't know. I want to read your comments. Hold on. I see another super chat here too. CJ Kidd. Yeah, let me go back to CJ Kidd's comment here. Actually, I got another one too. Sean Sheridan said, you can tell it was not made in you can tell it was not made in love. Carpenter in on the record saying he hates it, but he says Kills is the best since the first one. I can't wait to see it. Most anticipated of the year. Well, let me explain that for a little bit, okay? And I'm not doubting that Carpenter loves Kills, okay? But he knows how the machine goes. And his name is on there as executive producer. He's got a financial stake in this film, so there's no way in hell he's going to say, this is just going to be an average sequel. I don't think Carpenter's going to say that. Of course he's going to say that. But thinking back to even Halloween 2, even though Carpenter was a producer, Carpenter had some bad blood with Irwin Yablans, because he wanted to make The Fog next, and him and Irwin Yablans had like a verbal agreement. Yeah, okay, our next movie will be The Fog, and then after that, we'll do Halloween 2. And Irwin Yablans thought that Carpenter was going to direct Halloween 2. So then Irwin Yablans was on a plane ride, let's say a couple weeks later, and literally the guy sitting next to him on the plane was he was the head of Avco Embassy, who was the production company for The Fog. And he says, "Oh yeah, I'm doing The Fog with John Carpenter." Erwin Yablans was like, "What?" And Erwin Yablans was pissed off. And he said, "Wait, hold on. This can't be right because I just talked to Carpenter and we're going to do The Fog together." So, long story short, Erwin Yablans sued John Carpenter and Avco Embassy. And what's funny is Erwin Yablans was like, "Yeah, I was great friends with this guy from Avco Embassy, but this is business." So it's funny how in Hollywood people can sue each other and they can still go to dinner together, you know? But yeah, so he sued him and then they came to an agreement. You can go ahead and do The Fog with Avco Embassy, but then I get you back for Halloween 2 and you can produce. So that's what happened. But there was a little bit of that bad blood there even when he did Halloween 2. So I don't know if I'd trust everything Carpenter says about his opinions on that movie, because that's when those started, and Carpenter pretty much divorced himself from the franchise from after Halloween 3. He still produced Halloween 3, but I still think because of that lawsuit, he was probably kind of fed up with Halloween at that point. You know, that's just me guessing, but I think so. But really, really good comment there, Sean. There's another one up here. CJ Kidd says, "How does Michael know she's in the hospital? Same as his reason for killing and such. He just knows. He just is. No explanation needed, which is what would make it terrifying." Well, you got a good point there, but I don't think Michael has like a spidey sense. Like, I don't think he can sense where people are. But I do agree with you that he is just straight up evil, you know? And once you are in his, you know, his crosshairs, his target, he's going to come straight after you. Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. But I can buy that Myers wouldn't know where Laurie is. I think that scene in the movie that we're looking at right there, I think it did need, because in movies you want to have continuity. You don't, yeah, it's fun for the audience to sometimes fill in the blanks, you know, especially when you're dealing with a movie that's all about tension. But when you're talking about semantics, like point A to point B, you got to get your character from point A to point B. We need that scene right there, so that way we know there's no question, you know, Myers can get to the hospital. So I think that's why they did that, CJ Kidd. George Hellman says, "I can picture him going to the hospital to pilfer meds and bandages." Somebody said this earlier too, actually, and kill some staff. I could see that too, actually. That's a good point. But like in Scooby-Doo, somehow he keeps passing missing Laurie and vice versa until they spot each other. Yeah, and I guess that's something that could have happened. Like, let's say theoretically, Myers didn't know she was in the hospital. It's up to your script, but yeah, you could write something in there to where eventually they do cross paths, probably in the final act. I don't know. Sean Sheridan says, "I meant he hates Halloween 2. That might be true. Yeah, that might be true. You know, there's a lot of people that aren't the biggest fans of Halloween 2 that were behind the production of it. Like, I just, before the stream, I watched the Scream Factory documentary on Halloween 2, the most updated one. Really good stuff in there too, you know. And one of the interesting things, and you might want to pay attention to this because 10 Questions Halloween 2 is coming up in the next few days. So I'm going to give you guys a little teaser here, okay? So listen to what I'm about to say, all right? This is you guys get the inside scoop. Tommy Lee Wallace, he was all gung. He's like, you know, I'm new at this. I had a major stake in the first Halloween. I was production designer. I was part editor. These are all my friends. So he was all gung-ho to direct Halloween 2. And then he got the script. That was Carpenter's script. And he hated it. He was like, this just is not the same as, you know, the first movie. Not that he wanted it to be the same, but he didn't like, you know, the gratuitous kills and all that stuff. And so he backed out. He said, I don't want to direct this. I don't want to direct something that I'm not passionate about. So he ended up not doing the movie, and then it ended up going to Rick Rosenthal. So yeah, I mean, you know, that's the business too. A lot of times you do movies that you might not be that passionate about, but you want a paycheck. So I got to give Tommy Lee Wallace credit that the paycheck wasn't the most important thing to him. He wanted to be passionate about the project. So he did go on to do Halloween 3, which thank God he did that because I love Halloween 3. So yeah. Man, thank you guys for the good questions. Good questions. We got plenty more Halloween 2 talk though. I got some photos that I want to share with you guys from like behind the scenes. We're going to talk about the TV cut. We still got stuff to talk about, okay? But I think that's pretty much the button as far as like buttoning up the this topic right here, you know? Because how far can you go discussing, you know, what if he didn't know about the hospital? What if he didn't know Laurie was there? I mean, would you guys have been fine with Laurie not being in the second movie? I mean, I'm glad she was, you know? So, yeah. Interesting theory, though.